folks, welcome to the channel, Thinking Theology. I'm Don. Thinking theology, by the way, does not mean establishing it. It could be refuting it. You still have to be thinking about the concepts relating to theology and in order to refute them. And so I don't care if you're an atheist, agnostic, theist, hardcore Christian. I like nice people. And there are good people who think all kinds of things. And there are douchebags who think all kinds of things too. What your specific ideas don't matter. How you stand in them, that's sort of that's my penchant. That's what I respond to. But this video, what's the difference between atheism and agnosticism? And a number of folks have left comments on the channel. And I read the comments, by the way. And some of you folks are very bright, very astute, very articulate, able to state what you believe, and some folks are very thoughtful, kind, if you will, in the way they write. You can just tell a lot about the way someone writes. And I know this, there's a difference between atheism and agnosticism, but I like to delve into the nuances of thought, and that's what we're doing today. This is the Infographics Show channel, and they've got a lot of subscribers, so I'm going to put the link to their channel down below because that's where I got this video from, and I like to give proper acknowledgement. And I had just done a video titled 3 Types of Atheism from the Big Think channel. What's the difference between atheism and agnosticism? Let's find out.
Some of us believe in gods, some in reincarnation, and some are unsure, or believe it's the end of the road once we find ourselves 6 feet under. No one really knows for sure, but the quest to understand the truth and whether there is life after death has been a goal of humanity far before the first history books were written. How are some of our belief and non-belief systems alike? That's what we'll be attempting to find out in today's episode of the Infographic Show, Atheist versus Agnostic. How do they compare, and what's the difference? Atheism is, in a broad sense, the unbelief in God, or the belief that there is no God. Many atheists argue that it's a label that shouldn't really exist at all, as we don't create names for other non-belief systems. For example, there's no word to describe someone who doesn't believe in astrology. If there were, we would probably call them non-astrologers. But in recent years, the atheist movement has become a lot larger, with many outspoken famous atheists, such as scientist and author Richard Dawkins or comedian Ricky Gervais. The two main divisions within atheism are often called Gnostic atheism and agnostic theism. Those in the first group state that they definitely know there is no God and can prove it. The second group are people who say that they can't prove it with certainty, but there's most likely no God. In his book, The God Delusion, Richard Dawkins suggests a spectrum of 7 levels of beliefs, from those who believe in God to those who do not. The 7 categories that Dawkins popularized are: 1. Strong theist, which is someone with 100% probability of God being real. In the words of C.G. Jung, I do not believe, I know. 2. De facto theist, a very high probability but short of 100%. I don't know for certain, but I strongly believe in God and live my life on the assumption that He is there. 3. Leaning towards theism, so higher than 50% but not very high. I'm very uncertain, but I'm inclined to believe in God. 4. Completely impartial, spot on 50%. God's existence and non-existence could be both possible. 5. Leaning towards atheism, which is lower than 50% but not very much lower. I do not know whether God exists, but I'm inclined to be skeptical. 6. De facto atheist, a very low probability but short of 0. I do not know for certain, but I think God is very improbable, and I live my life on the assumption that He's not there. 7. Strong atheist, which is a person who would state, I know there is no God, with the same conviction as Jung knows there is one. It's commonly believed that an atheist would not waver from their belief and hold an extremist view, but actually many atheists do encourage open dialogue and debate between different viewpoints. So what about someone who is agnostic? The word agnostic is derived from the Greek word gnosis, which means to know, and the A, which is used to state the opposite. So literally translated, the word means not knowing.
The word early on, the Gnostics, and they're even mentioned in the New Testament, where they were a sect back, in the time of Jesus, and whether you believe Jesus was the Son of God or raised from the dead and all, it's immaterial. There is a fair amount of evidence in the writings to suggest that Jesus actually was a man, walked the earth, and all this sort of stuff. That said, the Gnostics in the New Testament. These were people who weren't highly regarded in the time, but they just said, we don't need external evidence for things. We just know. It's just on the inside. We just know it. And that's sort of like a quick blueprint of what the Gnostics are. But they were a sect known as Gnosticism. And this is where we still get agnostic. We don't know today.
Henry Huxley, an English biologist who lived in the 1800s, first introduced the word in 1876 during a meeting of Britain's Metaphysical Society. Huxley's definition was as follows: agnosticism is the essence of science. Whether ancient or modern, it simply means a man shall not say he knows or believes that which he has no scientific grounds for professing to know or believe. The word agnostic describes a person who neither believes nor disbelieves in the existence of God. They follow the belief that one can never know the world beyond sense and experience. In other words, the real world that we live in day to day. People who are agnostic are often criticized for not being willing to make a choice one way or the other. But this may be more misunderstood criticism, as really many agnostics take a firm stand on the view that we do not yet have sufficient knowledge and understanding beyond the physical realm, and therefore cannot make any definite assumptions about the existence of God. That's a little on what it means to be atheist versus agnostic. Now let's do a head-to-head comparison on the key differences. 1. An atheist does not believe in any God, whereas someone who is agnostic does not claim to know whether any God does or doesn't exist. 2. An atheist would often state that the lack of proof for God is enough proof that God does not exist, versus an agnostic who does not determine the existence or non-existence of God through proof, instead only states that we cannot know and therefore God can or cannot exist. 3. The two can be classified differently. Atheism is a lack of belief, agnosticism is a theory of knowledge that supports different belief systems. 4. The approach to each one also differs, where being an atheist is based on what a person does or doesn't believe, but being agnostic cares about what is possible to prove as a living person. 5.
Yeah, these are I refer to this, the epistemological concerns, theory of knowledge. That's what epistemology is. And when you study this and you get into what constitutes belief and the different gradations, just like he had, or the gradients, the way Dawkins had in the God Delusion, the 7 steps, coming down. Well, epistemology also falls into that, and maybe I'll do a video on this, not taken from academia, but just from daily life in common terms, where we have things that we believe, things that we have high confidence in, and I'm not just speaking about belief in God, but it could be whether or not I can handle that mortgage or what have you. And then you lay out the different scenarios. It's just called decision analysis. But then we say, all right, I'm going to act based on this is how I see and think about this scenario. And we like to have great confidence in the things that we're about to do. And it's about risk analysis. I mean, economists do this all the time, and we just assess risk. And people are generally risk averse. When it comes to epistemological concerns, can we know something? And what constitutes knowledge? Is it that there's some law written somewhere, or is there a being, a God, somewhere that set things in motion a certain way? And we are so in tune with that, whether it's in the scientific realm or the quote-unquote spiritual realm, that we have the 100% full picture on that. Is that what constitutes knowledge? And I say no, that none of that is available. I agree with Plato, not necessarily in his world of the forms, but where these archetypes of perfection exist outside us, and we can get closer to knowing what they are, understanding what they are by contemplation, but our senses limit us from getting to the perfection itself. We will always have some imperfection in our understanding of it, whether it's perfect justice, whether it's perfect love, whether it's a perfect table. I mean, you name your subject. We don't have perfection here on earth. We can't recreate it. We can't create it. And that's my view, that we don't have that. We don't know in full anything. And so we have that which we believe in, and some things we have greater belief than other things.
Being atheist is often associated with strong convictions that will only change after proof from other views, whereas being agnostic is more about looking at all possibilities and what cannot be known. 6. Atheism claims that we as people are here now without a greater purpose, and after death, there is nothing. Agnosticism follows the same view as with the existence of God, but that it might be possible for life after death, though it's just as unlikely. 7. Because of these opposing views, atheists will often criticize agnostics for not taking a firm stand. Likewise, an agnostic might criticize an atheist for being too extreme in their view. 8. It must be said that an agnostic can be an atheist, but an atheist cannot be an agnostic. Since being atheist by definition means denying the possibility that a God can exist, but being agnostic, no God is a possibility. But we may also simply not know what's beyond our physical world. One of the other big differences between atheists and agnostics is we don't tend to recognize people for being agnostic, but we definitely do for being atheist. We took a look at a few of the most famous atheists and what they believed. We found many of the outspoken atheists are actors. Here's what a few had to say. Daniel Radcliffe, who's best known for playing in the Harry Potter films, said though he doesn't preach atheism, he is a militant atheist when religion starts impacting legislation. Morgan Freeman said that it all comes down to a matter of believing, especially if people who believe in God don't think the world is more than 6,000 years old. And Brad Pitt was quoted by MSN as saying, "I'm 20% atheist and 80% agnostic." Another famous person where there seems to be some debate in whether he was a believer or not is Albert Einstein. Best known for being a pioneer in physics, he was born into a secular Jewish family. As an adult, he seemed to reject the idea of God, but then he also contradicted himself on a number of occasions. Here are two of Einstein's quotes. "I want to know how God created this world. I'm not interested in this or that phenomenon in the spectrum of this and that element. I want to know his thoughts. The rest are details." But then he also said, "I do not believe in immortality of the individual, and I consider ethics to be an exclusively human concern with no superhuman authority behind it." Atheist, agnostic, or a man of faith? We'll let you be the judge. Being atheist or being agnostic seem to be closely related, but are so often misunderstood as the same. But in fact, they have clear differences, as we've seen. To understand the differences completely, it may sometimes be easier to speak directly to the individual to explore their views on God and the afterlife. Do you think we can ever prove the existence of a God? Let us know by commenting below.
Yeah, I mean, he pretty well covered it, and I've said this many times. I've basically said the same things, but not just, I don't have the infographics. That's the name of their channel. But it was very well laid out, the difference in viewpoints, and people in the comment section have said so much to this effect, and basically said everything at different times that this video covered. And it's true. My view is we can't know it. History shows that we cannot. There's so much that we can't know. Will we be able to know things in the future? It still gets down to belief. And the way I approach things is that if I say I know something, really what I'm saying is I believe, assign your percentage, 99.5% that this given thing is true. But there's always an argument that can be made that casts some doubt on what it is I believe. And this is why it can be frustrating to talk with a philosopher, for example, where epistemologically, how do we know certain things? How do I know I'm not a brain in a vat? I mean, Descartes, I think, therefore I am. That's just evidence right there, so to speak, that this subject has been debated for a long time. It's been the topic of amusement in many ways. I mean, I suppose some people like to watch movies or sports, as I do. Other people like to contemplate these things, as I do as well. But Descartes was not distracted by television because there wasn't such a thing. But I think, therefore, I am. How do I know I exist? And even that has been, and he says, look, even if I am a brain in a vat, and these ideas and sensory perceptions are just being downloaded into me by some other being outside me that I cannot sense, there is still something doing the thinking, and that is what constitutes I, or me. I think, therefore I am. And there have been arguments in the last couple of decades that have said, yeah, that's just not really a good argument. And here's why. It's like, okay, of course, this is what philosophers do, and I love it. But the gist of it is that there's a lot that we don't know. We may observe something 10 million times. And we say, you know what? God, it's about time we assigned a law to this thing. Every single time every single swan we've observed is white. So we're going to postulate that all swans are white. Then all it takes, Nassim Taleb is big on this in his book, The Black Swan, appropriately titled for what I'm saying, that all it takes is a blue, black, green, red one gray one that comes up next, and it disproves your entire body of work that and your theory, your hypothesis, your law, everything that was based upon it now needs to be revised. It only takes one bit of contrary evidence, and I think that expression that says the exception proves the rule, and there are at least two interpretations of that, and one is that it proves it. If there's an exception to something, that proves that the rule is true. Now, logically, that's inconsistent. If there's an exception to a rule, that doesn't prove the rule. That word, but the other meaning, and I'm partial to this one, about the exception proving the rule, is that the exception tests the rule. When you're proving something, like when a cashier in a bank has to prove out at the end of the day, they've got to show that their math and the amount of money they gave is proper. So you're proving the numbers are right in your draw. So it's a test in that sense. The exception tests the rule. It challenges the rule. And that's more consistent to me. And history should show that there are a lot of things, every single thing comes under review, even gravity. We don't even know what gravity is. I mean, we can say by observation, when I drop a thing that's of a certain weight, it's always going to go down this way. Okay, fine. It's very reliable. It helps me survive. It helps me go about my day without additional complications. But that's not to say at some point the laws of physics aren't going to alter. And I'm just a very small sample size, cosmologically speaking, temporally speaking. I get 80 or so years on this planet. The average human gets somewhere in industrialized nation gets about that length of time. Males a little less, females a little bit more. That's a very small sample size of observation. So that's why epistemologically we don't know. So what constitutes an atheist? Somebody who says absolutely, I know there's no God, is just as annoying to me as somebody who says, I know there's a God. I know there's a heaven. It's like, well, if you change that word to I believe, we all get along a whole lot better. You probably get along with yourself better. But anyway, leave your comments, guys. It's an open channel for commentary. Try to couch them in nice terms. All right. Have a great day. See you on another video. Keep thinking theology, whether in favor, whether you're refuting it, or whether you have no idea. Hey, folks, if you want to take the personality test that I created for my life coaching practice, which is based on the book that I wrote, put your phone up, turn it on camera, and focus on this, and it'll take you to it. And it'll take you about 20 minutes to complete the test. It's free, and you'll get some information on your personality. It's quite detailed, quite revealing. It's kind of fun as well. And I'll be leaving this QR code up on the wall behind me for my regular videos. So I hope you take it, and I hope you enjoy it.